Başladık.
Sevgili dilbilim severler, 88.sini düzenlediğimiz İzmir Dilbilim Çevresi etkinliklerine hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Bugünkü konuğumuz doktor öğretim üyesi Metin Bağrıaçık. Ee, Hocam hoş geldiniz diyoruz size.
Buldum,
Ee,
merhaba. Teşekkürler.
Merhabalar. Ben sözü uzatmadan size bırakıyorum.
Harika. Söylediğim gibi yani kusuruma bakmayın İngilizce yapmak zorundayım sunumu.
Hiç sorun değil.
But thank you so much for this warm invitation. I'm really happy being here presenting this work in progress. And there's a slight difference in the title probably. So I'm going to be talking about the preposition that is displaced in Asia Minor Greek. And I'm going to look at the micro variation and its locus of realization. Maybe I should go slowly and start with what exactly I mean by Asia Minor Greek. With Asia Minor Greek, I refer to three dialects that were once spoken in Asia Minor, today's Anatolia, basically, and that of Cappadocia, and that of Pharasha, and that of Pontus, and one more that is called Sili, that's today's one little neighborhood in Konya. And these dialects were spoken in Asia Minor before the 1925, before the population exchange. Most of them have disappeared from these lands. They are still being spoken somewhere in Greece, at least. And there is one variety as a relic of Pontic Greek still spoken in Trabzon that I'm going to be walking to you through. Historically speaking, we're talking about this Asia Minor Greek that is quite divergent from mainland Greek or the Greek of southern Italy. And that partly comes because they evolved from an Eastern Koine in the post-classical Greek. And they were isolated from the mainland Greek very early on, actually, from the Persian and the Arab invasion of Anatolia. And what we have in our hand from these dialects is a number of retentions from post-classical Greek, and also notably innovations. And these innovations are largely attributed to contact with Turkish, especially after the 13th century. Well, probably this is how if you have ever heard of Asian Minor Greek, probably you have heard them about the language contact that they have undergone from Turkish, basically. So just walking you one more time throughout through the dialects. So the dialect of Pontus which we know as Pontic Greek, was spoken in an area from Sinop to Rize and up to Şebinkarahisar towards inland, basically what we call Pontus in English. And today there are around 15,000 people in Trabzon who still speak the dialect, and mostly along the Off Valley. And we refer to this Muslim Pontic variety as Romaica today. And there are another 300,000 people still speaking the dialect in Greece after the population exchange, obviously. With the dialect of Cappadocia, which was spoken before 1925, in Niğde and Nevşehir, we refer to a group of dialects which are not necessarily mutually intelligible among them. So they were spoken, as I said, in Nevşehir and Niğde. And today, unfortunately, just a few hundred speakers still exist, but only from one subvariety of the village Mişti, today's Konaklı, and still a big community, I would say, in Greece, still keeping the language alive. And for the dialect of Farasha, I refer to the dialect spoken in around 6 villages in Kayseri and northern Adana. In Kayseri is Develi and Yahyalı, and in Adana in Aladağ, about 3,000 people before 1925. Unfortunately, this is almost dead today. There seem to be around 25 acrolectal speakers in Greece who are who have active command of the language, but it's not being transmitted anymore. So the very last dialect that I mentioned, the one in Konya, the dialect of Sili, unfortunately disappeared without leaving a lot of texts to us to do a thorough analysis of the dialect. But we know its existence from a couple of texts from before the population exchange. And before coming to the problem and what I'm going to be talking about, I have to give some basic facts about the language itself, and the ones that are relevant. And in all Asian Minor Greek dialects that I have mentioned now, the dialect of Pontus, Cappadocia, and Farasha, we distinguish 3 genders, 2 numbers, and 3 cases. And what we know is that almost all non-human masculine and feminine stems receive neuter inflection when they are in the plural. And we know that there is differential object marking in Cappadocian and Pharisaic Greek in Pharasha, and we have differential subject marking in Pontic, and both of them are based on the definiteness hierarchy, and notably neither is observed in Romaica today. In terms of the indefinite bare noun phrases, what we know is the plural number is number neutral one, and the indefinite singulars are necessarily marked with the indefinite numeral one, as in one from Romaica today. Make me a picture, which means draw me a picture without the A, doesn't really work. So singular count nouns have to come with the indefinite. And modifiers, as in all the dialects, are necessarily prenominal. There are no postnominal ones, and in an indefinite NP, they all follow the indefinite numeral. And the examples are from Cappadocia, but the same things are the constant across all dialects. So a golden coffer or a king's son, which is a prince, as in 3. When we go to definite noun phrases, a definite noun phrase we see is accompanied by a definite article, both in the singular and the plural, which means it encodes number first, and it also encodes gender and case, that they agree with their head noun in those cases. And numerous sub-dialects of Cappadocian, which we know from the texts, the definite articles are absent in some gender and case categories. So here I have compared the 3 dialects that I'm going to be looking at today, the Cappadocian, Pharisaic, and the Romaica, where the man, the woman, and the child translates slightly differently. But as you see, they all have the articles, but only in the Cappadocian, which is not overt in that case. Just like in the indefinite noun phrases, so is the definite noun phrase, in that all modifiers are necessarily pronominal. And what we know is that they come in a very fixed order. So the demonstratives first, and then the nominal MP possessors, or the pronominal possessors, and then the number and the adjectives, and then the noun. So this is basically pragmatically the unmarked order across all Asia Minor Greek dialects. And what we know is that the modifiers, however, are always in the historically neutral form, which we can refer to as a default form across the board, which means they do not agree in gender with their head nouns, nor do they encode case, unlike medieval Greek or post-classical Greek, or modern Greek for that matter. What they just encode is the number difference, so singulars and plurals. One more thing that's going to be quite relevant is that all the dialects exhibit what people refer in the literature as the obligatory definiteness spreading or definiteness marking. And this refers to the marking of all the modifiers except for the demonstratives and the nominal possessives with historically neutral articles that only, again, encode number and no gender or case. So here is what a noun phrase, definite noun phrase, look like, translating into the good woman. So your adjective is necessarily pronominal. It precedes the so-called definite article, and the adjective has to be marked with this agreement marker, so to speak, that encodes singularity only. And without that, the structure doesn't converge, so it's ungrammatical. And neither the adjective nor the agreement marker are sensitive to the case of the head noun. So they are, you can say, invariant, except for the number. So in the plural, both the adjective and the agreement marker encode number as well, but not case or gender or whatsoever, but they could. So as I said, this obligatory definiteness spread or marking doesn't extend to the demonstrative. So demonstratives never get this agreement marker. So as you see in 7A and B, in order to say this woman or these women, the agreement marker is never there with the demonstrative. Yet the demonstratives also encode only number. So it also, at least for the time being, take it in parentheses, that the obligatory definiteness marking does not extend to the nominal possessors too. So these possessors are necessarily pronominal as well. And in order to say the woman's child, where the genitive precedes the head noun, you do not use the agreement marker, at least for the time being. Just take it as such. But pronominal possessors do agree, or at least show the agreement marker. So in order to say my child, there are these pronominal possessors that are also necessarily pronominal. They encode the agreement marker, and also, which mean they also they come with the agreement marker, which encodes singularity and plurality, so forth. So the picture that emerges is that there seems to be some sort of definiteness spread, at least up to a portion of the in the noun phrase, in the definite noun phrases. I'm going to revise this for some sub-dialects, but for the time being, there seems to be as such. So numerals, adjectives, and pronominal possessors have to be carrying an agreement marker, but not demonstratives and MP possessors. So with these in mind, I can slowly go into the problem that I had in mind. Well, I hope it's a problem. This is going to be about the locative or the directional like preposition se, which also exists in modern Greek, which I will show. And it comes from medieval Greek se, or which goes all the back way to the ancient Greek heis. And in 11, we see what it is like. Se napotir mesa, which means inside the cup. The inside part, of course, can be dropped over here. So when this says the preposition's complement is an indefinite or a bare noun phrase, the linear order is as in 12. So it just is at the left edge of the noun phrase. So you can have your modifiers, pronominal modifiers, but it says position is not going to be variant. So it will always be at the left edge of the noun phrase, as in 13a and b illustrates. So in 13a, into a golden copper or in a golden copper, and in 13b, to the hooves of 40 horses, where the genitive is sandwiched between the preposition and the noun phrase. And as you see in 12b, if say is the preposition, the realization of the preposition, there is nothing really strange with these structures. When says complement, MP complement in particular, is definite, it always occurs in the accusative in all dialects. So it governs accusative case. And what happens is that this say overrides the initial T segment of the definite article or the agreement marker, if there is one. So is in 14a and b, as you see, it is C strata or sapachades, which is not, which actually you could analyze as se and t or se and ta, such. And here's the thing, when says complement is such a definite noun phrase with modifiers, if there are modifiers, this says linear position with respect to the modifiers seem to vary across and within the dialects. So that was the first observation that we have. There are quite a lot of possibilities that come to the mind. First, whenever there is a demonstrative modifying your noun phrase, this preposition never occurs before the demonstrative. So it always seems to be after the demonstrative, as you see in 15 and 15. The 15a from Romaica, and then the 15b is from Farashut Greek. So se cannot occur before the demonstrative. It can appear once, depending on the dialect, at the very left edge of the noun phrase. This is the typical case without modifiers, when there are no modifiers for all dialects, but the pattern emerges as well when there are modifiers too. So when you have with modifiers, I mean here adjectives and the genitives, and is in 16a and 16b. Again, this doesn't seem like very strange. The thing is, it can also appear once after the modifier, but crucially before the noun. So in Farashut Greek, what happens is that this preposition seems to be sandwiched between the adjective and the noun. It happens also in Romaica, it seems. Or it can even appear more than once on both the modifier and the noun phrase. So you just doubles, basically, both fusing with the agreement marker and also with the determiner, as in 18. This happens in Cappadocia in general. I will walk you through more examples. or it doesn't appear at all, it seems. In certain subdialects, there is simply no overt realization of this preposition, just doesn't exist, even though in the places where the interpretation necessarily requires the preposition itself, as in 19a, if you sit on the ram, or he goes into the wise man's house. Yet in neither structure do we have the preposition in the text. So such a when we look at the whole picture of the Asia Minor Greek, such a picture emerges. So it first never appears before the demonstrative. This is constant across all dialects. But then depending on the dialect, it can appear in multiple positions, before the possessor, then before the numeral, before the adjective, or before the noun, or even it can appear in multiply on all of them. From just a hierarchical geometrical structure, if we just take se as the realization of the preposition, all these interim positions seem to be a bit, it raises some eyebrows. How does it happen? What happens here? And this is essentially the problem that I had in mind while preparing the talk. First, I'm just going to give you the micro variation in se's linear position across all these Asian Minor Greek dialects. And I hopefully suggest a uniform structure of the Asia Minor Greek definite DPs. And finally, offer a structural analysis for the se's distribution with a toolkit from the distributive morphology. Hopefully it will work. If not, take it as a work in progress. So I can zoom into subdialects and the dialects themselves slowly, because I know that the data is quite messy, I know. So let's focus first to the dialect of Cappadocia and in some dialects, in sub-subdialects of Cappadocia. So first, there is this village. There are these villages called Ulağaç and Ovacık today, which historically are referred to Ulagaç and Semendre. And when we look at all the texts from those places, what we essentially have is that se is missing with both definite and indefinite noun phrases. So simply, regardless of whether there is a modifier or not, we do not have se. It just never is there. There is no token of se in the text. That's what I mean. In all the other villages of Cappadocia, what we know is that it never appears before the demonstrative. And if there is an adjectival modifier, it necessarily doubles. It appears both on the adjective and on the noun as fused into the agreement and the definiteness markers, basically, as in 23. In dangerous places, translates as tahlikaliyada fasatopus. In quite a lot of Cappadocian villages, it appears, when there is a possessor, it appears both on the possessor and on the noun. So as in 24. So again, it occurs, it has multiple exponents, basically. At the girl's door, in order to say this, at least the texts tell us that you have to double the S, the preposition, on both the genitive and on the head. One piece of information that is important here is that these dialects have the so-called genitive article. So the possessors come with their own articles themselves, which over here in 24 fused with the S. But in a group of villages, and these have historically the names Silata, Gurzono, and Akso, which today are named differently, this se appears after the possessor only when there is possessor, as in 25, Oda Duyusoyokluk. But crucially, neither of these dialects, which essentially mark S only once and before the noun in the presence of a possessor, have genitive article. So there is no genitive article. The possessor is not accompanied by a genitive article itself. So what we have from Cappadocian is a picture as such. So first in Ulagaç and Semendres, the P doesn't have overt realization. And in all other Cappadocian dialects, there is one group of dialects where it never appears before the possessor and it doubles on the adjective and the noun. And in all other villages, no matter how many modifiers you have, it has to co-occur with all of them. And of course, here, the important thing I should repeat again, in the first group of villages, the possessors do not have.
Metin Bağrıaçık, o Boğaziçi Üniversitesi que ele
and in the genitive article doesn't exist for the possessors in the first group of villages. In the second one, it does. When we go to Faraşa, that is in the south of Kayseri and northern Adana today, all villages that are now in Develi, Yahyalı, and Alada, just like in Cappadocian, se appears always after the demonstrative, but with adjectival modifiers. First, there is one thing in the older texts, what we see, there are the cases that it always occurs before the adjective, as you see in 26a. These old chickens, to these old chickens. So s appears over here with the first agreement marker. And all the speakers today uniformly also accept it to happen, to appear between the adjective and the noun as well. So mark crucially on the noun here. So not necessarily skipping the adjective, on the noun itself. And if there is a possessor, uniformly both in the texts and today, it happens to be marking the genitive. And crucially, Faraşa Greek also has genitive articles itself. So what we have in Faraşa Greek is that if you have a possessor, it just happens with the possessor. And skipping the demonstrative, if you do not have a possessor in the structure, it happens to mark the adjective, and this is the pattern that we see in older texts. But today's speakers accept it both either before or after the adjective too. So in both places, but just crucially once. And finally, I go back to Pontus. Well, essentially, Pontus here should be delimited to Romaica, and we report our findings from Koknar and Eğridere in Çaykara. It seems to be always after the demonstrative, but with adjectival modifiers, crucially, again, it seems to be once, just like in Faraşa Greek, and everyone appears to accept it. Everyone that we have consulted appears to accept it right before the adjective. So as in 28a, in that big village, Sodrano Tohoriu. But there seem to be some people who also allow it to happen after the adjective itself, as in 28b over here, between the adjective and the noun itself. So this is why we refer to dialect 1 and dialect 2 over here. And if there is a possessor, it seems to happen before the possessor, still next to the machine. And we know that Romaica, just like Pontic Greek, also has genitive articles, which somehow fuses with the preposition itself. So what we have then, the same thing essentially as we have in Faraşa Greek, when there is a possessor before the possessor. If you do not have a possessor, first, some people strictly says, no, it has to be with the adjective, and some people say, no, you can also put it between the adjective and the noun. And just for completeness sake, I mean, why it is a problem, it shouldn't be a problem. What we have is in modern and medieval Greek, and all the way to the first attestation, this say, regardless of whether you have a definite or indefinite and noun phrase, it happens always at the left edge. So crucially before the demonstrative itself. So here is one example from modern Greek. On this yellow book of George, just S is right at the very beginning. But then these varieties also do not have obligatory definiteness spread. So here is the summary of all dialects. First, there are some where there is no se, and in some, se has multiple exponents. It happens on all modifiers, but the possessors, as in the villages of Silata, Gorzono, and Akso, or on all modifiers in all other Cappadocian Greek. Then there are those two varieties, Faraşa and Romaica, where we have single exponents. If there is possessor in these languages, it happens only before the possessor in both dialects. If there is no possessor, then before the adjective only, then it's what we see in the older texts in Faraşa Greek, and also some speakers of Romaica Greek also allow only this one. For some, it can also happen to be either before the adjective or before the noun. So quite a lot of speakers today of Faraşa Greek accept this, and the second type of speakers of Romaica Greek also has no problem with this one. So clearly, with such a mess, what we can say is that se is clearly not the spell out of a preposition. what instead we can say, just a key assumption, that is the morphophonological realization of some morphosyntactic feature that is a location or locative. And this feature seems to be dissociated from its realization. And what we have essentially is that such type of displaced morphology, we know it from a lot of different languages, such as Zu in many German languages and German varieties, or the definiteness marker in Amharic, have been very beautifully analyzed as displaced morphology. And out there in the market, there are quite a lot of approaches where the morphosyntactic and morphophonological requirements of such an affix as se would be listed separately, which may not necessarily correspond to each other. But among all these today, I would like to adopt the distributive morphology, which seems to at least provide a lot more tool to understand all these variation across the dialects. And essentially in this idea, morphology is the subcomponent of grammar along with the PF branch, where various post-linearization operations take place. And over here, such as lowering and fusion or fission can happen to the hierarchical arrangement of the morphemes. And then comes the vocabulary insertion, where essentially linearization can be imposed by the vocabulary insertion and so on. So once we postpone the realization of the preposition, it gives us enough tool to understand what's happening. And I'll claim that where say appears within the DP is in fact the result of the parasitic agreement, essentially, which means the feature copying of an aggr node from the D had quite high. And with this, what this micro variation refers to is essentially the parameterization of this feature copying, and hence where the aggr nodes are inserted in syntax with respect to dialects. But to be able to understand this, we have to give an account of these definiteness spread first. Quite a lot of postulations I have over here. First, what we can say is that definiteness is a feature of D, which is quite high, which is, however, never realized morphologically in that position. And what we have essentially a second piece of assumption is that agreement happens post-syntactically and before vocabulary insertion and linearization. And which means essentially it has to be built on syntax, which with which I mean an agreement node is inserted or adjoined to any modifier. And once it happens, the relevant feature from the definiteness is copied from the D to aggr node. So say you have an adjective and syntax, an aggr node is inserted, and then the def on the hierarchically closest C commanding D is copied into this aggr node. And what happens at vocabulary insertion? Agreement is spelled out as the T initial agreement marker, which we know as to or ta encoding number. Now, this seems to ensure the definiteness spreading to adjectives, but also, of course, the numerals and pronominal possessives over here. So the definiteness feature is copied onto an aggr node that has essentially been inserted in syntax, and then at the spell out, we have this as to over here. I just assume that the same aggr node extends throughout all the way to the noun, which is a bit weird to assess, but and then from here, what we can claim is that what is referred to as, in fact, the definite articles are the spell out of the fusion of this definiteness feature of the agreement with a class marker, essentially realizing the N. And this fusion is the vocabulary insert is inserted in the vocabulary insertion as the so-called definite articles. So they are not necessarily definiteness articles per se. They are just classifiers, if you can say. Definiteness is encoded quite high in the structure. Now, on possessives, so at least some evidence states that the aggr node adjoins the possessives as well, surely in some dialects. Well, we know that in certain Cappadocian villages, there is no genitive article, that's clear. But in others, the so-called genitive article form-wise formula is identical to the agreement markers, regardless of the gender of the possessor. We know in Greek that the genitive articles agree with their head noun also in gender, and they should encode genitive case, but which essentially would give you the idea that they would have a different form, but they never. Their form is identical to these agreement markers. even though they precede the genitive. So this may mean that essentially in such structures, we have the egg node also inserted in the possessive D that extends from the higher D. And this leaves us with a typology of the dialects that we have. First, those dialects that have no D, the possessor D, nor agreement with the possessor D. And these are the dialects, crucially, where there is no definite genitive article. O da doyukluk, which the possessor doesn't have the genitive article. And for those, we can claim that since there is no agreement inserted here, definiteness spreading stops at this point. And then there are those dialects in which the T agreement spells out the egg only, and this is some other dialects of Cappadocian Greek where they have this invariant or ta, just encoding the encoding number, but they are not necessarily genitive articles. So for those, what we can say is that there is no overt genitive article, there's only the agreement, which means definite spreading extends all the way up to the demonstratives. And then there are those in which the agreement that essentially is inserted with the possessor D fuses with that one, in which case we say the true genitive articles emerge. That's essentially in some other Cappadocian Greek dialects, but also what happens in Romaica and Parashut Greek. So here is the genitive article, truly. And for those two, you can say that definiteness spreads all the way to the nominal possessors as well. And this leaves us with the demonstratives only. Well, there are quite a lot of options to rescue the structure. One of them is to say that these demonstratives essentially are some spec position or some projection between the D and the MP, and then they necessarily rise to the spec DP, but crucially before the agreement insertion. And hence, we never have agreement with these ones, with demonstratives, that is. In order to say this woman, as you see, there is no agreement before. Now, with this in mind, we can go back to this se and this preposition and how it distributes. We could state first that the preposition, the P essentially over here, is simply expresses simply the future locative feature or location, whatever it is. And before vocabulary insertion, log is always lowered to the D. So essentially over here. Now, the rest, if this seems at least a little bit of logical in this context, the rest is somehow trivial. Saying this way is in fact always displaced, at least its morphosyntactic features always displaced within a definite DP. And its occurrence in the lower positions of the DP is due to the vocabulary insertion after the parasitic agreement, that is on the agreement of the egg nodes, their agreement with the D itself. And the future copying rule is subject to microparametric variation, both inter and intradialectally, it seems. And one option, what happens over here, when say appears in a DP without modifiers, that refers to all dialects. If you do not have prenominal modifiers, the egg targets all the features of the composing, all the features composing the, including the log that was lowered from P over here, and egg agrees with D. So essentially what you end up here is like something like sineka, which means to the woman. And that essentially spells out this part. And when say appears on both the adjective and the noun itself, when there is an adjective, it seems like all features of the D are copied to any egg node that you have, hence before the adjective and before the noun. This crucially happens in all Cappadocian dialects, where you have to double the S. And where say this appears, this P appears on both the possessive and the adjective and the noun, all features of the D are copied to all egg nodes. And this happens in those dialects such as in Dalmatia and Potamia. And note that in these dialects, as we have said, there is no genitive article, but the spell out of egg only, this one. So any egg happens to carry the preposition as parasitic agreement. And in dialects where say doesn't appear before the possessive but appears lower, crucially before the adjective and the noun, neither nor the possessive are present, if you remember. And crucially, because there is no agreement before the genitive, no feature, hence no feature copying can exist over there. And this happens in multiple villages. Whenever you do not have these agreement markers, you cannot have this S over here because it doesn't agree to begin with. And in dialects where say occurs once only, this refers to Farashut Greek or Romaica, and we can say that the feature copying targets the closest egg in the C command domain of D. So first, if there is a possessor, it has to appear highest, say appears before the possessor, which means agreement on the possessive copies all the features of D before fusing with the D. And this is the case in both Romaica and Farashut Greek throughout, and also in some Cappadocian dialects where you have the genitive articles. Once you do not have a possessor, say appears before the adjective, just like being the highest, on adjective copies all the features from D. And this is in fact the case in older Farashut Greek texts, and also is available to the Farashut Greek speakers today and certain Romaica speakers today over here. So the dialect 1 Romaica speakers, so it happens. And crucially, if stacked adjectives appear for every single language, and the textual record that we have that essentially follows the story, say appears once only with the highest adjective that you have. It never extends further. These good old animals, and over here on the big white horse. And for those dialects, unfortunately, here is the problem, who allow say in a place not expected by the story so far. That is, some speakers just put it, at least current Farashut Greek speakers and some dialect speakers of Romaica who accept it before the adjective and the noun. I can only posit that there is true optionality, because there is no such speaker who accepts it before the noun here, also not accepting before the adjective over here. So there, I can just assume that there is some sort of true optionality of this feature copying. Either you can say this is true optionality, or there is some sort of grammar competition for these people. I have no idea, but recall that whoever accepts these are all heritage speakers today. And just on time, I hope, what we have from this very confusing talk. So this obligatory definiteness spread, the so-called linear effect of this agreement, is in fact the surface reflection of the agreement nodes, and it's subject to microparametric variation. It extends monotonically in the extended projection of the end, but how high it extends depends on the dialect itself. And the second thing is that once we accept this for the structure of the noun phrase, and then the second assumption should be that the preposition S is dissociated from its morphosyntactic feature log. In sense, it's always displaced, descriptively speaking, but where it appears within the DP is in fact a function of the feature copying mechanism and how high the obligatory definiteness spread extends. You can say that say is always parasitic on agreement. And such minute comparisons, in fact, may shed better light in the history and the genealogy of dialect families, rather than focusing on how much they have been influenced and not from Turkish. And I think that's the only conclusion you can keep in mind if you don't like the previous poets. I think I'm done. Thank you so much.
Teşekkür ederiz hocam.
Ben teşekkür
Keyifli
ederim.
konuşma için. Dinleyicilerimizden sorusu olanlar el butonunu kullanabilirler. El kaldırma butonunu. Ya da doğrudan mikrofonu da açabilirsiniz. Chatbox'ı da kullanabilirsiniz. Biraz bekleyelim hocam.
Peki, tabii ki. Yani özür dilerim, çok hızlı, çok fazla datanın olduğu bir sunum pek yani user friendly olmadığını biliyorum. Affedersiniz.
Gayet açıktı. Datalar da netti
Ben
hocam. Yani
sorayım.
Öyle.
hocam buyurun. Cem hocamın sesi
Hocam
geliyor.
merhaba.
Merhaba Metin. Valla konuşma gayet netti, açıktı. Verileri özümsemekte biraz
Ya
zorlanıyorum.
evet, haklısınız,
Ee,
haklısınız.
şeyin
Hı hı.
bu çift ya da üçlü galiba triple da olabiliyor. Double da var. Triple da
Tabii
gördüm
tabii.
bir tane
Evet
örnek.
evet evet. Tabii ki de. Tabii ki de. Hı.
Evet. Bu yani bu aynı zamanda preposition olduğuna göre bu ikili ve üçlemede hepsinde preposition anlamı, bir tanesinde preposition anlamı var. Diğerleri de bir agreement görevi görüyor gibi o zaman. Sen
Haklısınız.
zaten agreement'ta
Tabii
parasitik dedin.
tabii. Tabii.
Ee,
Evet, haklısınız. Hı hı.
Yani çünkü hepsinde prepositional bir relation vermesinin hani pek bir
Anlamı yok
analizde
yani.
zor, evet, anlamı olmaz.
Hı hı.
O zaman bu çiftli, ikili, üçlü şeylerdeki agreement dağılımları belki o dillerdeki agreement'ın değişimine de belki bir şeyler söyleyebilir. Yani burada böyle değişiyorsa agreement, çünkü noun'larda böyle çalış, verb'lerde böyle çalış, başka türlü çalışmak gibi bir özelliğe sahip, çok daha sistematik bir ilişki oluyor.
Tabii ki.
Acaba bu ikilemede, üçlemede böyle oluyorsa, ne bileyim, verb phrase'de diğerlerinde de oluyor acaba agreement? Merak ettim doğrusu.
Hocam
Çok
benim sorumu sordunuz ama.
Öyle mi?
Reis'de nasıl oluyor diye soracaktım.
Çok haklısınız. Yani böyle parazitik bir agreement yani kesin kez gördüğümü söyleyemem. Yani özellikle
Hı.
Kayseri, Romeyka'da gördüğümü söyleyemem. Yani ama buna örnek olur mu olmaz mı bilmiyorum. Fakat double subject agree eden Cappadocian şeyler var. Yani hem Türkçe
Hmm.
ekle hem de Yunanca ekle beraber fiili şey yapıyor, agree ediyor.
Evet. Mesela öyle başka diller de var. Mesela Cirbal'de galiba genitive ise double agreement gibi gözüküyor.
Hı hı.
Ama yakından baktığınızda bir tanesi mesela genitive case'i kodluyor, öbürü agreement gibi. Yani noun phrase içinde agreement gibi devam ediyor. Burada da sanki benzer bir şey gibi gördüm de acaba dedim bu yani bu double iş görenler yanlarında hep böyle bir agreement'ı taşıyorlar. Bu enteresan bir şey yani.
Evet evet. Yani niçin taşısın, niçin agree etsin
Evet.
preposition'la bilmiyorum. O yüzden parazitik demeye çalıştım. Yani semantically vacuous, sadece yani definite speech
Olmayabilir de
sırtında.
aslında, biliyor musun? Yani evet, yani şimdi prepositional anlamı hepsinde olmadığını varsayabiliriz ama agreement'ın da bir anlamı var aslında. Bir reference, yani ne bileyim, subject verb agreement ne yapıyor? Subject referansını daraltıyor. Subject third person olacak diyor mesela.
Hı hı.
Yani öyle aslında agreement'ın da bir anlamı var da
Doğru.
birden fazla olması enteresan.
Evet,
Yani
burada ben yani neyi track ediyor onu bilemiyorum gerçekten. Ama
evet.
kendi içinde datalar çok tutarlı. En azından
Hı.
Kapadokya'da yani bu bir possessor, bir adjective, bir noun olsa üçünde birden çıkabiliyor. Yani üçünde birden çıkıyor.
Hmm.
Özellikle bu şey
Evet.
olanlarda, yani genitive'nin önünde de agreement olduğu kısımlarda hepsinde çıkıyor. Fakat neyi track ettiğinden emin değilim. Yani belki
Evet.
de daha detaylı incelemeliyim. Yani şimdilik bir fikrim yok. Özür dilerim.
Bu dillerde genitive subject alan fiiller var mı?
Genitive subject alan var.
Var mı? Hatta evet.
Yok,
Ya
maalesef.
mesela burada yok mu? Pardon, duymadım.
Hiç yok.
Yok
Hiç,
dedi hocam.
evet,
Hiç
modern
yok, tamam, pardon.
Almancadan farklı olarak hiç yoklar
Evet,
artık. Yani ya da şeyden yani Ancient Greek'ten farklı olarak hepsi, yani throughout nominative accusative.
anladım, tamam.
Teşekkür ederim.
Ben
Ben
teşekkür
konuşacağım.
Vahit Bey merhaba. Tabii ki.
Merhaba. Merhaba.
Görmek güzel. Buyurun.
Ben dil bilimci değilim. İngilizcem de biraz kıt. Fakat izleyebildiğim kadarıyla bazı Romeyka şeylerde yanlışlık var sanırım.
Tabii ki, buyurun. Buyurun.
Bir de on the long road, e, uzun yol üzerinde dediğiniz şeyde domagrisodromu olmaz. Böyle bir cümle yok Romeyka'da. Kimden aldınız bilmiyorum. Somagridodromu olabilir.
Süper.
O şey değişmiş, artikeller değişmiş orada, yer
Evet.
değişmiş
Yok,
galiba.
tabii haklısınız. Yani
Burada
Hı hı.
İneka diye bir şey de yok. Yani i artikelinden sonra nega kadın olarak kullanılmıyor. İ
Ee,
artikeli kullanıldığı zaman kesinlikle önüne ye gelir, inega olur.
tabii
Fakat
doğru.
yenin düştüğü yer sadece sin ineka ya da din ineka.
Hı
Sin
hı.
ineka yani sin ve dinden sonra gelen yineganın y'si düşüyor.
Neyse,
Diğer mesela inega, sinega gibi hep ye geliyor. Bunu belirtmek istiyorum
Yo,
sadece.
çok iyi dediniz. Sağ olun. Ağzınıza sağlık. Şimdi özür dilerim. Galiba yanlış şey, bu İnneka Faraşa'da yani Kayseri'de böyle söylüyorlar.
İ artikelinden sonra sadece neka mı
Neka.
kullanılıyor?
Aha, Neka. İnneka ya da İneçiz.
Özür dilerim, ben bizim
Yo,
Romeika'da
sorun değil. Ama diğer dediğiniz de çok iyi. Yani sizin için sadece şeyden Sommagrido Dromo oluyor değil mi?
Somagridodromo banda diyebilirsin. Ban
Tabii.
somagridodromo
Tabii.
ama önce soy yani
Evet.
domagri, stomagri uzun,
Hı hı.
sodromo çok şey oluyor. Çok ters bir şey. Yani
Ters mi oldu size? Evet, birkaç kişi böyle dedi. Ondan eminim. Fakat
ya dili bilmiyorsa sorduğunuz soruya da ilk kez muhatap oluyorsa cevap alamazsınız. Yani önüne ne çıkıyorsa söyler adam.
doğru.
E,
E,
Böyle
Ben
kullanılmıyor.
bunları ses kayıtlarından çıkararak şey yaptım önce. Yani direkt gidip sormadım. Burada S olur mu, burada olmaz mı? Bazı insanlar S'yi ikisinin arasında koyunca Allah Allah dedim. Yani sonra
Yani,
tekrar edince olur niye olmasın dediler.
yani mümkün değil. Ben ömrüm boyunca hiç duymadım. Yani küçüklüğümden beri bu dille doğdum, büyüdüm. Yani bu
Hmm,
dil
tamam.
kesinlikle mümkün değil.
Olmaması çok daha iyi. En azından daha tidy bir hale getirir Romaika'yı. Çünkü onlar için yani o acek şeyle
Öyle
şey,
yani doğuyu kullandığın zaman mesela domagri dosturaçı dersin. Mesela uzun değnek, uzun değneği. Ferome domagri dosturaçı. Bana uzun değneği getir. Domagri dodromo uzun yolu olabilir. Yani o uzun yolu nasıl vuracaksın? Lana cruzado domagri dodromo dersin. Yani o uzun yolu nasıl vuracaksın? Fakat on the long run'ın karşılığı bu değil yani. Somagri dodromo eban.
harika. Yani siz de çok consistent olan yani kendi içinde tutarlı olan Romaika konuşmacılarındasınız. Zaten dedim ya hani bu S'yi ejective ve şey İngilizce konuşurken belki arada kaçmış olabilir. Sıfat ve noun arasında koyanlar aslında daha yeni nesil insanlar. Yani
Bir de
dediğiniz gibi belki
son
daha şey.
zamanlarda belki de bu S'ler yani yönelme ekleri falan karışmış olabilir. Artikellerle artık karıştırıyor
Doğru,
toplum.
doğru,
Çünkü
doğru.
çift dilliliği de aşmış. Artık Romeika bitme aşamasında her tür cümleyi yani her tür şeyi bozuk cümleyi şey yapıp duyabiliyorsunuz. Yani bir
Haklısınız.
de yeni nesille soru sorduğunuz zaman ben bunun çok farkına vardım. Mesela bir soru soruyorsunuz. Siz bir dil bilimci olarak soruyorsunuz. İşte şu cümleyi bana kur. Ama o adam ya da o insan hiç hayatında böyle bir soruyla karşılaşmamış.
Hı.
Dolayısıyla sana size vereceği cevap
Beni
çok
memnun edebilecek bir cevap olabiliyor yani.
olmuyor yani. Onun doğal konuşması esnasında bir şeyleri yakalayabilirsen yakalama yani en doğrusu belki de o ama yine de yeni nesilde pek artık Romeika'nın yarısı bile kalmadı.
Doğru diyorsunuz.
Çok
Yani
karıştırıyorlar yani artık.
hı hı, hı hı, hı hı.
Bir de şu var, yabancı insan olduğu zaman yani evin dışında köylünün çok yakın çevresinin dışında bir insanla Romeika konuşmak çok oldukça zor. Çünkü karşıdaki insanın sizi anlamayacağı şeyi var. Korkusu var ve bu korku beyinde hakim durumda. E, tamam Romeika konuşalım diyorsun ama konuşmaya başladıktan sonra Türkçe'ye dönüyor.
Evet.
Çünkü sizin onu anlamayacağınızı biliyor. Bu korku onu Romeikasını unutturuyor yani adamın.
Yo, ağzınıza sağlık. Yani hepsinin farkındayım aslında. O yüzden onların hepsini çıkartıp şey yapabilirim. Yani göz ardı edebilirim. Fakat yani aynı patron, yani sıfat ve noun arasına, isim arasına da bu s'yi koyanlar şimdi Yunanistan'da da var, Kayseri'den gidenler. Yani onlar için de nasıl bir kılıf uydurabileceğimi bilmiyorum. Yani o Somagridodromo sizin için okey. Fakat
Evet.
onlar için Domagrisodromo da okey.
Domagrisodromu bana aşırı ters geliyor. Yani
Evet. Yo, tahmin ediyor. Bana da çok ters geldi. Çünkü zaten modern Yunanca'da bu imkansız bir şey. Yani olmaması lazım böyle bir şeyin. Fakat hem yazılmış hem ses kayıtlarında bir sürü örnek çıkınca artık göz ardı edememez oldum. Yani bunun bir şey olması. Yani bir gerçeklik payı var. Çünkü hani tükaka diyerek bir kenara atamayacağım kadar çok insan.
yok, böyle kayıtlar varsa vardır. Yani yapacak bir şey yok.
Evet,
Ben
maalesef benim de bir şey
bizim
bulamadım.
Genel'in Romeikası ile ilgili konuşabilme şeyim var. Yani o da üzerinde ömrümü tükettiğim için. Yoksa
Biliyorum
almış
yani
Faraklı
yadsınamaz.
ya da
Yadsınamaz.
e, Kapadokyalıların falan o dilleri incelediğim falan yok. Yani zamanım olmadı onları incelemeye.
Yani
E,
şu sonucu çıkarmak istedim. Özür dilerim, sözünüzü balla kesiyorum. Yani bu tip küçük varyasyonlar, yani bu mikroskopik araştırmalar aslında bu lehçeler arasındaki bu bağlantıların da ne olduğunu, ne derecede olduğunu aslında görmek için güzel bir turnusol kağıdı oluyorlar. Yani işte kulaktan dolma şu dil şununla alakalı falan demek tabii ki de
tabii
şey,
ki bu
yani yanlış olduğunu söylemiyorum ama yani yapılacak daha çok şey var. Yani bu kendi lehçeleri arasında karşılaştırma yapılabilecek bir sürü nokta var yani. Bu
tabii ki
lehçeler
bunlar
arasında
siz dil bilimciler için bayağı bir iş yani oturup uğraşıyorsunuz.
Evet, evet. Yani çok garip şeyler çıkıyor böyle baktığınız zaman ortaya. Yani sunumlardan pek şey yapamadım ama yani bu patrona benzer, yani Kayseri'deki patrona benzer S'nin yapılanması Kıbrıs'ta çıkıyor. Yani nasıl olabilir bilmiyorum.
Geçen Kıbrıs'taydım, bir kitap benim kitap tanıtımıyla ilgili Trodo Dağı mı ne, oraya bir dağa gittim. Manastır vardı orada. Manastırın kapısında kurucusu bizim Trabzon İmparatorluğu'nun son krallarından bir tanesi yaptırmış kiliseyi. Dolayısıyla bir alışveriş vardı orada. Yani gidiş
Evet, var. Yadsınamaz bir alışveriş var. Yani
var. Onlardaki mesela bizdeki feromenero menin sona gelmesi
hı hı.
ya da nalesme dibo yeni Yunanca'dan farklı olarak onlarda aynı
Evet,
tespit
evet.
ettim. Var bayağı benzerlik. Çitakizmos var
Hı
mesela.
hı, hı hı, hı.
Erinçe'ye dönüşümü.
Doğrudur.
Bayağı bir ortak şey var yani onlarla.
Evet, evet, haklısınız, haklısınız. Peki. Çok teşekkür
Ama
ederim.
orada da Yunanca kaybolmak üzere. Çünkü herkes artık İngilizce konuşuyor. Buna gideceğiniz büfede, süpermarkette, her yerde, her yerde.
Hı hı, anlıyorum, anlıyorum. Peki, çok teşekkür ederim.
Neyse, konu dışı belki biraz oldu. Benim
Teşekkür
özür dilerim.
ederiz Vahit Bey. Olur mu öyle şey?
Rica ederim.
Sağ olun, çok teşekkürler. Melike Hanım bir şey sordu ama ben chatten kayboldu galiba.
Evet hocam, chatten kayboldum. Melike hocam, mikrofonunuzu açıp sorabilirsiniz dilerseniz.
Galiba kendisi burada değil, o yüzden kaybolmuş olabilir.
Buradayım hocam, yok buradayım.
Öyle mi? Merhaba, merhaba Melike Hocam.
Merhaba, çok teşekkürler. Çok ilginç bir konuşmaydı. Benim
Teşekkür
sorum data ile ilgiliydi. Çok iyi takip edemedim. Az önce de hani dediler hani
Benim
örnekleri
hatam. Yani çok
zaman alıyordu. Sadece sorum hani bu Karamanlıca metinler olarak biz de hani Türk Koleji alanında ele alıyoruz da karşılaştırmaları yaparken hani bu 13. yüzyıl Türkiye'deki Anadolu Türkçesi dediğimiz dilin oluşumu, yani onlarla biraz karşılaştırma yaptım. Sizin datanız, incelediğiniz data Konuşma dilimi şu an güncel olarak yani hangi dönemi kapsıyor? Sadece onu merak ettim. Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Teşekkür ederim. Tabii ki de önce yazılı metinler çok önemli. Yani bu dilekçelerin birçoğu ölmüş durumda. Yani yoklar artık. Yani 25'ten sonra Yunanistan'a gittiler ama yani ondan sonraki 40-50 yıl içinde neredeyse hepsi kayboldu. Böyle relik olarak birkaç tanesi var Yunanistan'da. Bir sürü sebebi var kendilerince bu dilin kaybolması için. Fakat şöyle bir şey var, yani buradan gitmeden önce de çok böyle arkada milyonlarca kelimelik korporalar, şeyler bırakmadılar yani maalesef. En erken dönem herhâlde 19. yüzyılın ilk yarısındandır. Ben bu çalışma için Kapadokya'dan da olsun, şeyden de Faraşa'dan da olsun bütün ne kadar yazılı metin varsa hepsine baktım önce. Sonra tabii oraya gittikleri zaman, Yunanistan'a gittikleri zaman da şeyler var. İlk gittiklerinde Eee, Yunan hükümetinin, seferberliğiyle bu laografya dedikleri toplum bilimsel şeyler, birkaç tane veri toplamışlar, birkaç kitap basıldı filan. Onlara da baktım tabii ki. Yani çoğu yazılı metinler. Eee, Zaten onların da referansları buralarda veriliyor hep, yani yazılı metinlerden aldığımın hepsi. Fakat sözlü olarak da tabii Selanik'te Kapadokyalıların hâlâ çok büyük oranda ikamet ettikleri bir köy var. Oraya gittim. Yani o insanlardan aldım sağ olsunlar. Bir de, işte, Kayseri'den giden insanların yaşadığı birkaç köy var bugün Kozani ilinde. Oradaki insanlardan aldım dataları. Yani çoğunluğu ama yani tarihsel metinlerden, yani bundan önce yazılmış şeyler. Genelde çoğu da hikâyeler, masallar, işte, onlardan derlenmiş şeyler.
Teşekkür ediyorum hocam. ODTÜ'de bununla ilgili bir tane bildiri dinlemiştim. Hala derleme yapıyorlar diye duymuştum da o yüzden merak ettim. Hani şu an güncel konuşma dilimden var mı diye. Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Rica ederim, ben teşekkür ederim.
Teşekkürler Melike Hocam. Başka sorusu olan ya da katkı sağlamak isteyen varsa doğrudan mikrofonunu açabilir. Kayseri'den selam var hocam size. Chatbox'ta görmüşsünüzdür belki.
Ay, göremedim, özür dilerim. Çok selamlar. Çok teşekkür ederim Turan.
Başka sorumuz yoksa hocam dilerseniz oturumu kapatabiliriz.
Siz nasıl isterseniz. Çok teşekkürler herkese.
Ee,
Çok
Biz teşekkür ederiz hocam davetimizi kırmayıp kabul ettiğiniz için. Önümüzdeki hafta daha önce 84.sünde hocamız rahatsızlığından dolayı ağırlayamamıştık. 9 Eylül Üniversitesi'nden doktor öğretim üyesi Mihriban Aydın'ı dinleyeceğiz. Çince'nin temel yapı evrimi üzerine konuşma yapacak. Önümüzdeki hafta UDK olduğu için çarşamba değil salı günü, onu hatırlatayım. İlk defa İDÇ'miz salı günü olacak. Görüşmek üzere diyorum herkese.
Görüşmek üzere. İyi akşamlar herkese.
İyi akşamlar.
Çok teşekkürler.
Çok teşekkür ederiz. Koraycığım oturumu kapatabilirsin.